This conference will now be recorded.
Should have done that earlier. Oh, and that's a minute. So, Natasha, you can take it away.
So, my opponent stated that there was a bias if government regulation was imposed on social media, that the government would try to exploit their ideas more than others. And however, this is only proven by China. However, there are also other countries that do not impose a bias on their regulations and instead use their government regulation on social media for the better. That is to help their younger generations to not be seduced by dangerous advertisements or things posted on the dark web, and that is all thanks to the regulation on social media. However, China, although they may suppress one's freedom of speech, they are doing it for the good of their government as well as reputation. In a modern society, one tends to forget about human rights and instead emphasize one's power. And currently we live in a society of power. As well, freedom of speech is an illusion and has never been proven effective. For example, protests in the US and elsewhere have been silenced, and voices of minorities have been silenced throughout the course of history. So there is no proven fact that freedom of speech would do any good for these people if it has already been ineffective throughout history. Therefore, I conclude by saying that freedom of speech is not a reality, but instead an illusion, and that not China, but other governments are trying to protect the lives of people through avoiding advertisements that would do harm to younger kids and citizens of the country.
Okay. And Drithi?
Can I refute the points she just made in her refutation speech or no?
No, but you can talk about things that happened in the cross-ex.
Okay.
But yeah, save that part for the weighing, the last speeches.
My opponent stated that the government regulating social media would lead to greater data security, however, than just social media companies regulating data. However, she only provided one example of social media companies failing to regulate data, and that was only with one company. Also, she did not prove that the government would be any better at regulating data and maintaining user security. Furthermore, my opponent also stated that the government regulating social media would save lives, but in her speech, she did not mention how social media had killed anyone. Posts, advertisements, and advertisements, social media had how they killed people, and an example of that was when you mentioned Switzerland's laws banning advertisements. You mentioned laws that advertisements that for food that didn't have the actual nutrition content. That doesn't kill anyone. So the government regulating those kinds of ads would not save any lives. In addition, you argued that there would be no incentive for social media companies to regulate content, but that's not true, because if social media companies don't regulate content, they receive backlash from the public and from the government already. So they have incentive that way and to regulate media.
Are you done?
Yes.
Okay. All right, take a minute. Hi, Mom. All right, that's a minute. So, Natasha.
Okay, my computer's kind of overheating right now, but hopefully you can hear me. Okay. Do I start? Okay. So, my opponent has mentioned that I failed to bring up how government regulation on social media would prevent killing. So I am here to kind of explain it a little bit more. So as I said in my introduction, that the cases of sexual harassment has increased over the year by 300%. This is one example of violence that is inflicted over social media. And although this might not be death immediately, this does cause trauma, which does lead to suicide. And there are many, and the suicide rate has increased, and part of it is due to cyberbullying and trauma and those who don't get help from it. So by getting government regulation, these types of posts or things being spread online would be monitored by the government, and they could take it into their federal matters. Also, another thing is my opponent brought up is how I mentioned in Switzerland the nutritional facts and how those are regulated. Although this does not impact killing or anything, it does impact the health of a general citizen, and what they are putting into their bodies. And this does affect the quality of life of a citizen of physical health, because since the government is regulating the food that they're advertising, citizens would know that the stuff they're advertising is good for their bodies, and that would promote a better lifestyle and a more healthier lifestyle. Another thing my opponent brought up is that
That's time.
oh, okay.
All right. So let's go over it. I think for the most part, we're running into the same issue. So the first thing with Natasha is it's just a real easy, quick, simple.
Is he frozen?
Can you angle your camera down a little bit more?
Oh, is that good?
Natasha.
Yeah?
That's already better. I'd say a little bit further down. A little bit more.
Is that good? Sorry, your audio's
That's
like
way better.
okay.
Because like my audio's bad?
Like it's lagging, like the audio and the video.
Oh, it's just lag. Let me see if I can do anything about that. We do have a lot of windows open. Way too many windows open. Okay, hopefully that helps a little bit. Okay. But yeah, you look 10 times better now, because it's just kind of weird getting a whole speech with your, I can't even get the say, because you're like also angled up. So it's like, I'm like, this would be a weird angle to talk to someone for a long period of time, right? But like right now, you look like a YouTube star. Like you look like you're ready to start a blog post. So the idea is like you want to keep your head and your eye line a little above halfway. I'm sometimes bad at that, and I keep myself right in the center. But like this should be better. Like head for higher up is always going to look a little nicer. Not feedback I'm used to giving from my IRL coaching days, but I think it's useful to think about. And so with all your arguments, I actually have just pretty much the same thing and then one big structural point. We don't really have any impacts in any of these cases, in any of these arguments. So we have like people will see bad things. Is that bad?
Oh wait, was that the conclusion?
No, that's your first argument. People will see bad things.
No, I'm just asking, like, what's the last thing I did, the conclusion? Or
So I'll talk about I'm talking about your opening case right now. Are you talking about the conclusion of your opening case?
no, I kind of lost track of where we were. So was our last, like the last thing we were talking about?
Yeah, I think that was
rebuttal?
your closing speech.
Oh, no, not closing speech.
Oh,
No,
really?
she was wondering if the last speech she just gave was supposed to be her closing speech.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that right now. I'm talking about your first speech.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, your first argument, it's just talking about what people are going to be able to see on social media. And like, that's not an impact. Seeing less things isn't really helping your case. So you have to tell me why that's important. Like, what is that going to translate to? Because none of that's on like the hierarchy of needs or the quality of life things that we listed. Like not seeing gross or mean content isn't one of them. Same thing with your second argument, data security. What happens if we don't have data security? What bad things happen? Because right now it's just somebody was able to see some people's videos when their cameras were on. Like that, maybe that's kind of bad, but you got to impact that out. And with the last one, like then you even admit in the last one, this isn't that big of a deal. Don't tell me that. Make it a big deal. So what happens when people can sell anything on these social media sites and the things on these sites are bad or low quality or not healthy or what have you? I got a buddy who I'm sad to admit is a buddy, but he has an addiction to buying things he sees on Facebook. And he's come home with hundreds of dollars worth of Facebook bodybuilding like testosterone supplements. And he's like, this is gonna help me be energized and get big and strong. Like it's obviously that. Like it's exactly what you're talking about of like, that's not what's in there. It's not gonna work. It's a scam. But you spent hundreds of dollars because they told you testosterone is the cure to all of your problems. Like the guy's a really unhealthy guy, so he does have some health problems, but that's because he lives on energy drinks. It's yeah. He's my drummer. So, but and then he wastes a lot of money on like other stupid stuff. If you ever see them advertising shirts to you, I just saw a shirt on Instagram that I'm like, that's my personality. It's a picture of a bear drinking coffee, and it just says, I drink coffee, I hate people, I know stuff. That's what I do. Like, I like this shirt. Persuasive buy. But yeah, through examples and like fleshing that out a bit more, we can add some content there. And you're only at about 3:30, so you do have a little bit of time to add these impact sections. If the impacts make it too long, drop one. That would be fine. 2 good arguments is better than 3 incomplete ones. All right. And Drithi, you kind of went the opposite direction. You're at 437. So first thing I would cut from your speech is just drop all of the First Amendment stuff. Like it doesn't really help you since you're mostly international anyhow. Like in the US, it would be illegal. You spend a lot of time warranting like specifically the US, and then you're like, but also other places. Like, stop talking to me about the US, just tell me about the other places. Because the other places, all that analysis also applies to the US. So it's just more useful. And that should get you below time. But I'm also concerned with your lack of impacts too. Like you tell me the marketplace of ideas, but what ideas are we going to lose? What ideas have we lost in the past because of censorship? That's how you impact that argument. And same with bias. This is really close, but I'd like a few sentences of like projection. So what does this look like in countries other than China? You don't have to tell me that like America's doing these bad things, but what would this look like in America if we started banning things like China did? What could we like hide from our history? I think that would be interesting because that'll get you to an impact section. Like Trump would immediately erase the negative history of maybe Confederates or something like that. Don't say that, but something along those lines. Or would like really push like, gosh, Washington was such a great guy and now they're tearing down his statues. Like I could see him really pushing that narrative if he could control some media like that. All right, on to these reputation speeches. So Drithi, on your first one, so you attack her data point by saying she doesn't have enough evidence. That's fine, but that's a perfect reason to compare. Now remember, you also need to have your own counterclaim and support. So if you give me a counterclaim and support, and then you tell me, and she only has one example supporting your case, now you're winning.
Okay.
So for instance, say like data security is pretty good right now. Like Facebook, Twitter, like they all pretty much agree they don't sell their data outside of their network. Like Facebook did it a couple times and they got a bunch of flack for it, so they don't do it anymore. She gives one example about now you're done. But do you see, like, with that counterclaim, it's more persuasive?
Yeah.
And last thing I'll note here is, Drithi, I want to try something with you. Look to a random sentence in your case. Any sentence. You got one?
Wait, what? What did he say?
Find any sentence in your case. Pick one at random.
Okay.
Now read it.
I have too many tabs open.
Huh?
Allowing the government to have the power to regulate media could result in the suppression of information that could be used against the government.
All right, that's good. Now say angry.
Allowing the government to have power to regulate media could result in the suppression of information that could be used against the government.
Ooh, that's better. Say it happy.
Allowing the government to have the power to regulate media could result in the suppression of information that could be used against the government.
Oh, I don't like that one. I like angry more. Can we hear it sad?
Not sure if I know how to do that. Allowing the government to have the power to regulate media could result in suppression of information that can be used against the government.
Oh, that wasn't too bad. I liked angry the most, though. Angry, you had the charisma, as well as like an appropriate tone for what you were talking about. And I'm not saying you have to give the whole speech angry, but
If you
you got to make a decision. Choose an emotion.
okay.
Because honestly, I would prefer happy Drithi over just I'm going to read this in a normal voice Drithi. Because that's we gotta step it up the passion there a little bit. So I would say start anything angry, and if you think that's funny, then you get happy speech. That's okay too. But we just don't want default no emotion Drithi, okay?
I couldn't hear most of what you were saying.
Yeah, a comment would have been cool. Oh, sorry. Let me. All right, I'm still here. I'm just. Oh, I'm thinking without a camera, it might be a little bit better.
Yeah.
Just don't. Yeah, keep passion going. Whatever it is, like make a decision and stick with it. I like angry the best, but your call. Just don't go default. Don't go emotionless monotone. Because you have a great range. Like I can think you did some theater because you even did sad pretty well. Have you not done any acting? Okay, well, whenever I have people do that exercise, usually I don't get that good of results for all the emotions I give. You nailed all of them.
Thank you.
So yeah, bring that into your debate. Then just real briefly on these last couple speeches. So here is where we have to make decisions. So we won't have time to defend all of our arguments. We won't have time to attack all of our opponent's arguments. Like, this is where we have to figure out the biggest thing we think we can win that's on our flow, and the biggest thing, and maybe their biggest thing that they could be winning on their flow, and then we have to compare them. We might have time to do that twice, like 2 big things and then 2 smaller things. But for this one, like, I'm thinking Drithi's probably winning this free speech argument, because Natasha, your refutation was really short. You kind of said free speech doesn't help people that much, and it's kind of an illusion. You responded to it, but I'm thinking she's still probably going to win this argument. Whereas on your case, you didn't say anything about your first point, Natasha, so you can probably win this argument. So now we're weighing the ideas of free speech versus that free speech could be used to show people things that are violent, illegal, repulsive, bad things. So we might have the right to do that. But now, Natasha, it's easy for you to say that this is where you get into it. And let me give you a vocab word, Natasha, if you want to keep this argument: Bandura effect. I'll type it. I think I spelled it right. But that'll get you your impact for your first argument if you want it. And basically, the Bandura effect just says when people, especially children, see violent imagery, they're more likely to become violent themselves. So now we're comparing, like, okay, some people, we're not allowed to show these bad things, but in the long run, we're going to have less violence because of it. We're going to have a less violent society because of it. Now you're winning that argument. Or, Drithi, say you add the impact of the marketplace of ideas and say, there's some truth to these arguments that people are saying, even the things we're banning. Like, we're gonna, like a group that might often get like hashtag canceled or whatever it's called, is like men's rights activists, right? But a lot of feminists have listened to men's rights activists and they're like, oh, some of these concerns are valid. And because of that, we're better able to address feminists, because they listened to arguments that otherwise they might have not listened to, have improved their positions to include things like, yeah, and maybe we should reconsider how many men we're sending to prison, and like we should take a closer look at like the men who are in prison, the conditions that they have to deal with, like prison sexual assault is actually a really big problem for men, and like feminists should be against all sexual assault. So feminists are able to improve their position by listening to people who they would have otherwise preferred to cancel. Just so you don't have to take that example exactly. It's just one that I kind of like, because it usually upsets liberals, and who doesn't like to do that? Kidding. I'm kidding. But I hope that was helpful. Do we have any questions before we go back to the main room?
No. Also, when will we find out which side we're doing tomorrow?
We'll probably let you know first thing in the morning. But really good job, both of you. This was a great first debate, or second for Natasha. But yeah, we're right at our times. We're mostly doing the things we need to do. Like, we understand that we're summarizing and weighing. We understand that we're doing refutation. So I'm feeling pretty good. You're killing it. Let's go back to the main room.